Oh, impressive! Over 400 frames per second! Guys, I haven't played EVE Online recently, but today I launched it again on my Linux machine. I don't know if something has changed, either the game is better optimized or there is better compatibility for Linux, but I used to get about 200 something frames per second at the same NPC station. But anyways, here are my game settings. Nothing special, just optimized for my need. Hey, if you watch some of my other videos, you probably know I like Linux tech and gaming. And yeah, space games are cool. Therefore, I'm migrating my space games to my Linux desktop, and for today's video I made a quick tutorial to show you how I run EVE Online on my Linux. First, we need to choose a launcher, and for EVE I use the Heroic Games launcher. Our launcher in Linux will allow us to set up games with special configuration and is very useful for games that are not built for Linux officially yet. My setup is simple, performs great, and works with the help of Proton Cache Runtime, which is already available as part of the Cache gaming packages. This step should be similar for other Linux distributions and launchers. If you're starting with a fresh CachyOS installation and you play games, the fastest way to configure dependencies is through the Cache Hello interface. So from the Cachy app launcher, search for Hello and choose CachyOS Hello. Navigate through Apps Tweaks and click on Install Gaming Packages. This should install necessary drivers, dependencies, Heroic Launcher and also other launcher applications like Steam and Lutris. Then you should be able to find Heroic Launcher under Games, and you can see I have other games like Stellaris and Sins of a Solar Empire. I could probably make another video about them if there is interest. By the way, some Paradox games are Linux native and they run very well under Linux with Wayland. Heroic Games Launcher will open interface with empty libraries. Menu on the left gives us access to settings and global configuration. Our purpose is to run a game, in this case EVE Online, which doesn't have a Linux native version yet, so it will be treated as a Windows game. On Cachy, I don't need to manage runners and like Proton G and Wine, because the system already has Proton Cachy special version already available as part of the gaming packages. What I usually do here is go to settings and game defaults and assign my default Wine version. Proton CachyOS, or you can try Proton CachyOS SLR, which is the stable release, or the latest version of Wine, in this case 11.4. Wine prefix folder can be a games folder on one of your drives, or you can leave it default. Since I'm trying to use anti-sync, which is available in Linux kernel from recently, I use that instead when games are running fine, and I disable eSync and fsync. You can experiment to see if your game supports Wayland display server, but EVE Online does not yet. So it will run using xWayland, which is adding a translation layer to make a game run under Wayland. If you're already running Xorg, this setting is not relevant to you. On the other tab I have enabled anti-cheats, but I have disabled most of the other options because I use them per game. I use FPS and stats through Mango HUD, and I don't use game mode and Steam runtime. On the advanced tab I have disabled verbose logs because I enabled these when there are problems, and you can add wrapper and environment variables for global configuration, but I still prefer to use these per game. On game scope I don't use any of the options. Some of the games already have upscaling, and I'm doing FPS limiting through Vulkan. On the legacy tab I used this option before for limiting the frames of games, but since I use the Vulkan variable, this is no longer necessary, and I think it will be removed from the launcher in the future. We can now proceed to installing EVE Online through the official website from CCP and download the executable. You can see that my system is detected as Mac, but we can use the link below and download the EVE Windows Client executable. Click on it, and now I need to save the file. I have a dedicated NVMe for games with a games directory, and I have already created the EVE directory inside, which will be used for the prefix and installing the game. Save. Now we can go back to Heroic Launcher and Library, and we can add the game. Click the button, and we can type a new title. in our case EVE Online. Heroic Launcher will download the thumbnail for us automatically, and we can leave the platform Windows. I'll expand Wine settings where I can add my prefix folder that I created earlier. So my NVMe, games, EVE, choose. Wine version runner will remain my default, and since we don't have executable to run the game yet, we need to set up the game, so we need to click on Run Installer first. Click on this button and select the EVE Online executable to set up the game. If installer launched successfully, and I can choose now location for installation. I think it's fine to use the default one. You can change that to program files, but really doesn't matter much. Install, and we're just installing the game as we would normally do on Windows. After the game is installed, we can close this window. And we can go back to Heroic Launcher where we can set up our executable. Click on this icon and go to drive C in the prefix, users, your user, app data, local, EVE Online, and eveonline.exe. Click on finish, and now the game should appear on your library. I'll just click on play now to see if the launcher will now start successfully. Everything is fine. Before I start the game, I want to show you custom settings that I mentioned earlier I do per game. So you need to click here to open its launch settings. And you see the tabs on the top. These are the same tabs that I showed you from the global configuration. On the wine part, everything here, it's the same as from the global configuration defaults that I used. But if you go on advanced and scroll down below, there are some differences, but most of the time I keep the same settings here. The first one is anti-sync. Proton use anti-sync equals 1. This is because I don't use eSync and fsync. Anti-sync is available from Linux kernel, so I use that instead, as long as the game is compatible and is able to use it effectively. The next one is vblank sync to vblank. I set it to 0 because I don't like vertical synchronization, and especially for games that are using Wayland. Since Wayland does sync frames natively, you don't need to use vertical sync or vblank. It can be set to 0. EVE Online doesn't run on Wayland yet, but I think I don't like vblank for it anyways, so I set it to 0 anyways. The next one is enable G-Sync. Since my monitor is G-Sync compatible, I am enabling G-Sync by setting up GL G-Sync alot equals 1. And I mentioned earlier that I'm limiting my frames through Vulkan, so I use the XVK frame rate equals 120, which is like half of my screen refresh rate, which is 240. If the game fails to launch on your Linux distribution or launcher, you may be facing additional problems with missing Windows dependencies inside the prefix. So in order to fix that, we need to use Winetricks. So open your Wine configuration and scroll down below until you see Winetricks. This is a feature that allows us to fix these missing dependencies, for example, a missing font or a .NET package. So you can type .NET, and you can see that there are different versions that we can install, and we can fix these dependencies. So we used to do that for EVE Online in the past for different configurations to make it work. So I'm throwing you a list of known dependencies that were missing in the past. You can try use this if you're having problems, and I hope this resolves your issue. Some of you guys may prefer to play EVE Online through Steam, and that's perfectly fine because Steam can work the same way as Heroic Launcher. So you just go to the store, find EVE Online, scroll down below, and you can play. It's free to install from here, so just click install to add the game to my NVMe drive, and then the game will be added to my library. I can now go to properties and compatibility. I can force a specific version of Wine, in this case Proton CachyOS, and I can keep it like that. Then I can go back to general, and you can see the launch options. I actually can allow us to add all the configuration that is relevant for the Wine runner. And we can use the same configuration that I added to Heroic, but what I do here instead, I can just use some configuration from another game and copy the launch options that I used before. If they're relevant or I change something, I can just copy it over. For those of you who are wondering which shader I'm using on CachyOS, I'm using LoveD with gaming performance profile, and I'm using Nvidia open source drivers. And let's now start the game and see how it performs. This time we're at Jita and the game is running fine, looks good, and my frame limitation for 120 FPS is working. The game is still stable and smooth. I also checked the VRAM to see how much utilization on the memory the game creates, and you can see that it's using about 50% if I'm docked. If I undock, it's ramping up a little bit to 70%, but keep in mind I'm OBS recording in the background, and I have also a browser open with a couple of YouTube channels and stuff. So I want to test something in the game. I'll just undock and I'm going to test some low level missions. What I did with the graphic settings, I changed my post-processing and shader quality to high, because it appeared that at Jita the game is a little bit darker, and to make it look better and for testing it out, I changed it to high on both post and shader. Still look good, and you can see that this area is usually very crowded, so a lot of ships, entities, and I'm still getting a stable of over 100 FPS, which is great. Are these guys still ganking here? It feels like these guys are always here, man. Like, I used to play years ago and even months ago, and I see the same guys with same names doing some ganking on the Jita undock. I think this one is a looter, but there was a tornado. Oh yeah, this one. But okay, let's continue. So it seems that at Mo Rassi there is an agent for level 1 missions, and I'm going to just do one simple mission. Oh, camera shaking. Well, I don't like camera shaking, I'm going to turn it off. Make sure you don't use eSync or FSync for Evil Online. There was a known bug in the past. There was some threading issue, so whenever you undock multiple times, it's creating some unnecessary threads that the game doesn't clean up, and it creates a crash at the end. So anti-sync or FSync and eSync disabled completely.
Warp drive active.
Really smooth. I didn't get any stuttering or anything that will bother me. I see a lot of entities. It's because it's one of the most crowded high-sec areas. Maybe this is the one. Yeah. Eliminate. Okay. Ex-employee. Alright. They accept it? No? Yeah. In the same system? Great. I usually prefer to play around 100 frames per second, 120, because anything above that doesn't make sense to me, and every game that I play, actually I play it like that. It's also keeping my computer cool. You can see that my graphic card is on 60 degrees Celsius right now, and CPU is cool too. That's too far. Okay. Let's burn. I'm using rails, so I'm just shooting them from far. They have done some updates on these special areas and missions, and they look better than before. And that's done.
Warp drive active.
So that was everything from this video. Thank you very much for watching. Maybe see you next time. Bye.